Thank you for your problems, Rick. So I was struck by something that Michelle said that's going to probably resonate in this story as well, and that's that she felt like it might not be possible to have community without vulnerability. And I agree with that, and I think this story, you'll see some of that in here. This is a story of Chris and I. Chris is also at Corner Church in North Loop, and confronting a very painful and destructive presence in our lives. And I think it's why Scott and the rest of the team asked me to speak, was because of estrangement, the word or the presence of estrangement. And what makes this story unique is that we were both approaching it, Chris and I, from the opposite ends of the spectrum. And I think you'll see that a little bit in the story. You see, Chris, he could have been one of... I practice this a lot, and I never cried while I was saying it to myself. So I'm not going to. I'm going to overcome that. He could have been one of my sons. Chris's father left his family. After having an affair and cheating on his wife and on his kids. Much the same way that I cheated on my wife and my kids. So let's take in the scene. One Sunday morning at Corner Church, Chris is at one end of a small table. I'm at the other. You know the scene. We didn't get we got it. Cool. Okay. And in between us, they're not here. I'm sorry they're not here because I was going to crack a joke about him. Steve and Deb are in between Chris and I at the table, and my wife, Kathy. And you know how that looks and how that feels sitting at the table, discussing and kind of doing our Corner Church community together. Now, Chris and I have known each other for a few years. We exchanged niceties and greetings, pleasantries before church. And we were always friendly and interacted well, played well together. And here we're sitting, and we're about to answer this question posed by our pastor. What's it going to take to resolve or break the estrangement in your life? I don't know what any of the rest of you think about that question, but what I think about that question, no matter how long I've been dealing with it, that's a hard question. You'll see why more. You probably already can tell. We had no idea that we were coming at the power of estrangement from, like I said, the opposite ends. So when Chris spoke up in his vulnerable, soft-spoken voice and said he would need his mother and father to meet together with a mediator before he would have any individual communication with his dad at all anymore. Without that, he was not interested in further communication because he did not want to be hurt anymore. I sat back. As you can tell, I'm the father. Steve and Deb, bless their hearts, and this is Steve's joke. He's going to miss this. They've been faithfully married for what, like 75 years, They're sitting there going, we don't get this, And Kathy's processing it, and then I'm sure she looks over at me and goes, oh, what's Rick going to say? After having been, not communicating with his kids for 10 years. As I sat back, I went from relaxed, comfortable, wise and thoughtful Rick at the table who can talk about anything, to the inquisitor. I mean, I went to the inquisitor because I was amazed that I was sitting at this table with a son who might be able to help me understand what I'm missing when it comes to addressing estrangement in my family. Although I doubted it, and I assume Chris was wrong, then I did. You know how sometimes at your table you get with that person who dominates the conversation, who just doesn't take a breath and just keeps talking. It doesn't happen a lot. They mean well, but it does happen. I don't think that's me normally, but I took over that conversation at that table. I saw this is an opportunity. I'm taking it over. And I went ahead and I just asked a series of questions. Of why questions. Because I was so floored by the statement that Chris had made, and I was sure that it didn't make sense. I don't think anyone felt pressured or attacked as we were discussing. And just like here, just like then, time is really short at church. Time is really short to build community in that little interaction. All of us at the table could sense something was happening. There was some sort of breakthrough going on. So Chris and I agreed, let's get back together and let's have coffee. Let's do what we say we do. And we agreed that I would email him right away that week, so we could. Next Sunday came around. We were doing our pleasantries again in church. And Chris walks up to Rick and says, "Hey, Rick, did you send me an email?" Kathy looks over at Rick and goes, "No way, Rick, you didn't. You did not send him an email." And I went, Mr. Proactive, always there doing stuff. No, I didn't, Chris. I will right away. Did the next time. That week, Chris and I sat down that next week, and we fleshed out parts of our experience with estrangement and why we held the perspectives we had. Chris could see and hear a father's brokenness, remorse, and regret. I could see a son's anger, fear, and vulnerability. We prayed together, and we agreed to keep in contact. Chris is still here. And we confronted this power that way. And we waited on God to answer our prayer. Shortly thereafter, Chris's dad called Chris, and they had a breakthrough conversation. I don't know how big a breakthrough it was. We haven't really talked about it. But I know he had a breakthrough conversation. He mentioned it a couple times. My son, my oldest son, Stephen, has been texting me every week since the beginning of the year. And we had no communication. And I don't mean no communication. I mean no communication. Chris's vulnerability and my brokenness prepared the way, opened the door for the son of brokenness and the Father of vulnerability to come in and express and expose estrangement and continue the healing process through our interactions here at Corner Church. I hope this goes together. The question, if it doesn't, just make something up, have fun. But what do you do when you discover you were wrong? That's it. Have fun with it.